Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pancake Parlay, episode 68. I am your host, The Don, and I'm here with Chatters. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, Don. How are you?
I'm going good. Our episode this week is pretty much just going to be all E3 stuff and what they announced, what games we liked, what we didn't like, and kind of going kind of across that whole thing. So, overall, how did you feel about E3 this year? Like all the showcases?
Usually I'm not somebody who pays attention to everything that comes out of E3, but I think the fact that we kind of planned, okay, we're gonna do something for E3 and we're gonna, do a bit of an episode centered around it got me a little bit more, involved in wanting to find out more information about it. So this was like my first E3 where I actually tried to pay attention, although I didn't stick around and watch every conference. I think the only conference that I watched live was the Nintendo one, and I didn't even know Nintendo was going to do one. Because one, I didn't pay attention to any of the scheduling, but two, I also thought that like a lot of companies have kind of gone away from the E3 like showcase spectacle aspect of it, because it used to be very much like a business styled showcase, but which then slowly became something that the fans kind of looked out for and paid attention to, right? And as such, for example, Sony wasn't around this E3, and I guess we'll go into a little bit about why that's the case as well. But I also thought Nintendo was gonna do like they had already done like a Nintendo Direct on I think Pokemon Sword and Shield, so I didn't necessarily think they were gonna do one, but because I just incidentally was up at like 3 a.m., I like caught that particular conference and saw
Just
it live. But
randomly up at 3 a.m.
well, I was playing video games, which is kind of poetic given the context, and is in the spirit of E3 after all. But yeah, like I think it was interesting. Some of the games that were like announced, they I think some of them are pretty interesting in concept, but we obviously need to see more about okay, how's the actual game itself going to look. That's kind of the big thing about E3 is to try and get people's eyeballs on what's going to be coming out in the next like year or so, or if there's a game that's coming out this year, what can we see? We want release dates, we want release times,
Well, this is where all
and we
the normies kind of like get all the information, or like pretty much E3 is the big mecha event that like just like what is it, New York Times or whatever just goes to it, and that's like their big kind of like gaming news type of thing, where it's like most places that don't report on news or games, this is the time of year where they report it, and then they just disappear, and then they come back once a year, basically to do the same thing.
Well, yeah. Unless you're like a gaming outlet like Polygon or Kotaku or something like that, you're only going to really care about like the big announcements, like Ninja and Drake streaming together on Fortnite. That's going to be a big headline kind of thing, and E3. Is usually something that's going to be able to get people to go and click on whatever articles are coming out. And I think there are honestly like a few interesting games that have either been like announced or previewed, but nothing. And to be honest, I can't like I'd be lying if I said like I wasn't excited for games that are coming out, but at the same time, it kind of felt like there was something a little bit missing this year. But I don't know. What about your thought?
Yeah, I thought this was a okay year. Pretty much, yeah. There's a few good games, good surprises that were out there, and a few games that I saw more of. Especially when you get at the press conferences, and then most of the time they show actual gameplay, um, on other people's stage demos, like IGN and GameSpot, whatever. They have their own stage demos, and that's when they actually show the gameplay and they talk over it. I feel like that's
Mhm.
to me the good part of E3, but I do like the show and antics of the show of presenting and everything like that. But as you were mentioning before about the whole it's kind of a weird year, and it is true because it's pretty much an off year because everyone knows that next gen is next year. PlayStation 5 stuff as well as Xbox Scarlet or whatever they call it. So definitely all the kind of big hitters that they've kind of been rumored to be coming out, or things that like for example, we didn't see in Assassin's Creed this year. So definitely they're
Mhm.
probably building up a new
I
Assassin's
think
Creed for the next gen, 100%, and they're
yeah,
probably going to launch that.
Exactly. I think very much you're correct in saying that. Like a lot of it is kind of a little bit of a lull year because they're setting up for the big
There was no Call of Duty,
kind of
was there? I think that's the first
I think
time.
well, I think the reason why that there wasn't a Call of Duty per se is that because it must be because they already announced Modern Warfare, right? But I think at the same time, there wasn't a direct, I guess, sponsorship through like Microsoft or something like that. Is that what you mean? Like,
Yeah, pretty
ooh, like
much.
Call of Duty
Because
on
Call of
our
Duty is always on
console.
like either Xbox or PlayStation side, and they were just nowhere to be seen because they're just like, okay, I guess they're nowhere to be found. Like, but then
Yeah, I
again,
think.
like I don't know, like Call of Duty still sells and people still play it, but I feel like, like 7 years ago, Call of Duty was the thing that like
Oh
is,
well,
you know,
I think Call of Duty peaked. I think back in like 2013, 2010ish, right? With like I think they haven't been able to reach the current numbers that they did in the past, and that's purely because there's been more competition from outside games. There's been a different kind of changing gamer palettes, right? Like in terms of what people want to play in terms of like from a competitive genre. I mean, if you just look at Twitch, right? The most streamed game like a decade ago would probably have been something around like, StarCraft or something, right? In terms of like,
mhm.
hyper competitive with lots of eyeballs watching. Then it kind of switched from like, and then there's like, things like CS and stuff as well that was also going on. But, it went from, going from StarCraft to then becoming like Dota being the big one, that kind of Dota, League of Legends, like those kind of MOBA styled games, and everybody was playing MOBA styled games.
And then
And
it
I,
took off from there.
yeah, and the thing is, I say that because like I'm not a fan of MOBA styled games. I kind of found the gameplay pretty boring. That you could probably get good at, obviously, and there's like a structure to it. But personally, I was never a fan of like the MOBA styled games, and this is coming from someone who actually does enjoy like kind of I guess like the tactical styled like games at StarCraft, Age of Empires, which actually did get an announcement this year. I grew up playing World of Warcraft 3, the original. I don't know if you ever got this done, but here in Australia there was like a promotion with Nutrigrain where
Yep.
you'd get like a free game. And I remember like, I told my parents, oh, we've got to get Nutrigrain, even though we already had Nutrigrain in the house or something.
We
Like
need to
we
get
ate
another
it, and I was
box.
like, I need to get the one that had Age of Empires in it.
I'm
And I still
surprised
have
they.
that.
Yeah, I still have that disc, and I'm surprised
Yeah.
they even had that promo, especially back in those days. But like, that would have been a pretty expensive thing to do. But even
Uh,
now, I don't really look at cereals, but I'm pretty sure they don't do stuff like that anymore.
no, I guess they don't, and I think it's because like, you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't know exactly why they've moved on from it, but I guess it's just that promotions for things have become more social media driven rather than something buying something that you already have or already will buy and promoting a product through that other product. They'll just promote it via social media or via a social media influencer, etc. It's probably the reason because it's kind of a big thing in America, having like a toy or something inside the cereal. Maybe they might have changed that because it might be like a choking hazard or something.
Who knows? Who
Uh,
knows?
it kind of reminds me of that really great episode of The Simpsons where Bart, I think, almost dies from like eating a toy that
The crusty thing.
yeah, and then
Yeah,
he
I remember
gets
that.
yeah, and then they offer him like $50,000 or an elephant or something like that, and he
No, that
picks
was the
and he
radio
wants the
station
elephant.
one. I think that
Oh,
one they
that's a
offered him
different
money
one.
or something like that.
Then what? I'm pretty sure there was something. Anyways, it's not really important. But
We're
Simpsons,
just
great show.
tangents everywhere.
Yeah, but yeah, I think ultimately like the thing with popularity of certain kind of games or shows is trying to get people to actually come and watch those things, right? And so Call of Duty has kind of fallen off the popularity it once had, like a decade ago, because now we have things like Fortnite, which is free, and that is able and that lowers the bar to entry in a particular kind of format. We recently also had I think Destiny 2 kind of parting ways. Bungie, not Bungie. Oh yeah, no Bungie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bungie split
Bungie.
with
Yeah,
Activision,
split. Yeah,
and so
split with
then they're just
Activision
like
Blizzard.
their own
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and so like that was like a pretty big. That's a pretty big news thing because they kind of got rid of their game off the Blizzard store. and have put it onto Steam, and now and the thing is, they got out of their contract a year early. So what that means for Destiny 2 going forward, I guess we'll have to see. Especially since, especially this EA, there's been a lot of promotion of things being on Google Stadia as well.
Well, streaming in the cloud seems to be the big trend.
Well, the cloud used to be, the cloud was the big thing during the initial Xbox One announcement, EA, a couple of years ago. The particular conference that kind of put Microsoft in a really bad position in the gaming market, in my opinion. That whole EA kind of left like a really sour taste. The E3, sorry, that particular E3 left a pretty sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Even though some of it is very ahead of its time. I guess like not the always online gaming aspect, but the cloud gaming aspect, which I think they're still working on because they were trying to get Crackdown 3 ready. In order
that's why
to
it got
have
delayed for like 5 or 6 years, because originally I think it was only online, but like the cloud would take the grunt of
the work. But even now, like the game has kind of is quite different from what it was originally intended to be. So I wonder if it was quite like they were being quite jumping the gun a little in terms of
they were very much ahead of their time, almost, where it's just like
ahead of their time, much to their detriment, is what I'm saying. It sounded like a good idea.
I think it came out around the same time of like the controversy of like SimCity and the DMR stuff, and I feel like that was more of a piracy issue than a always online type of issue. But that's the thing with this generation. We've had games where they're just only online, or they only have multiplayer, and I feel like that's kind of like we've kind of been over the past 3 years just normalized it almost, and then no one really, people do care, but it's less and less these days. I think especially when you saw the rise of something like a Minecraft, where like it's normal, but when you get online it's much different. Same with something like a Fortnite or any of these battle royale games. Or like, especially basically Dota and League of Legends, I would say also helped as well, because pretty much that game is an online game.
Yeah. I guess like there has been a shift of focus towards having online capabilities for games, because that kind of does lead to a justification for why there would be a need of a online or always online connection. And like even Steam, a couple of years ago. You didn't let you play games offline, right? And that was something that a lot of people didn't like either, which luckily Steam kind of changed on, and now you can play your games offline without an internet connection. And and all these things will slowly change as a better internet infrastructure comes into play. Like here in Australia, our internet infrastructure is really bad. I think we're like within like I want to say top 100. Or top 50 like in internet in the world, which is kind of bad for a first world country, right? But although I think our mobile internet is in the top 5, which is actually pretty good, but that's not too surprising either, because our telecom infrastructure is pretty good as well. But yeah, ultimately I think the reason why things like Call of Duty maybe are slowly having less and less of an impact is because they're becoming less culturally relevant. And I say that not to kind of like shit on them, but rather, well, it's changing with the times. Like people care about Fortnite and Apex Legend. Like that's the new hotness, as you'd say. And that's what people are watching on Twitch, because that's and again, because the barter entry is not $60 or $80 here, it's free, and that's how they have to kind of and unfortunately that's how some of the business models are kind of moving forward to being, because as we said, like Destiny 2 is going free to play, and now part of the reason why is because it's not making the kind of money that Activision Blizzard originally wanted the games to make, with the content drip free feeding that they were initially doing. But ultimately, where the future of gaming will be now, I think it might be, like it's good, at least with some of the stuff that I'm seeing from E3. And I guess that will be a good segue to move on to the first conference, which is the EA Play conference. In terms of the games from this lot, I think we can both agree that the only game that we kind of are interested in is the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order trailer that came out and gameplay stuff. Would you agree?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like Battlefield 5, like I'm a big Battlefield fan, but 5 didn't do it for me, or V, whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Sims is very casual. I don't really care about FIFA or like a lot of the
Oh,
sports
you
games
don't.
that they had. Like,
Oh, you don't care about like what is it? The soccer card trading game that they have on FIFA? No, you don't care about that?
no, definitely. And Apex Legend, like it actually died. You know, like it's still there, but it's still, it's like, yeah, it's dead. So
Yeah, it's got its niche, it's got its fan base, but it's not as big as
when it
it
first
once
launched,
was.
yeah. So
And I think that came down to like a lot of the updates and stuff like that. But yeah, with Fallen Order is kind of like the more big game that EA kind of presented, and that might be the reason why that they only kind of had this as their their lead in to everything, because they want this game to kind of be remembered. Because I think EA, after they got the rights to like the exclusive rights to make video games for Disney, they've kind of dropped the ball in terms of the potential that Star Wars had. I think the whole Disney acquisition of Star Wars has been one big like dropping of balls. There's just balls everywhere, and they can't figure out how to collect them all. With Battlefield 1, that, or Battlefield, that came out a couple of years ago, that obviously had people interested. Once the game came out, it wasn't that great. And then Battlefield 2, or Battlefront, the Battlefront series.
yes.
Battlefront 2, when Battlefront 2 came out, it also had the big controversy centered around loot boxes and having to grind games in order to get the in-game currency to purchase certain skins, or certain not just skins, actually, like in-game
characters and stuff.
abilities and characters. Yeah, exactly. So there was actual content that's blocked out because of trying to make it more grindy to make people want to pay in-game money for a game that you already paid for.
My whole thing is like with Jedi Fallen Order is it's actually a single player game. Like Battlefront 1 and 2, those are only two Star Wars games that have come out, and they're both multiplayer focused. I think this one is like the first single player game with a story.
Sure.
Like as Battlefront 2 had one, but like this is like a different thing as well. It's also not a shooter. It's like a third person action game, and I think it looks pretty alright. Like I feel like this.
I think it looks okay.
Yeah,
like, I don't think.
I've got hopes. Like it's good to see a Star Wars game in this gen and making it look good, and I don't know where to place it of something like it's probably not going to be too hardcore of an RPG like KOTOR, for example, but it's not going to be. I hope it's not as kind of dumb, but kind of somewhat fun of something like the Force Unleashed type of games. I kind of want that middle ground of like the Tomb Raider reboots where there's some upgrades, but there's also some action with it.
Yeah, I think the Force Unleashed games definitely kind of are definitely putting you in this like kind of overpowered like kind of Jedi Sith kind of player. I think this is gonna be that middle ground game, but subsequently I think it kind of almost looks like very similar to the cancelled game Star Wars 1313 that was going to come out like a couple of years ago, that they showed was in production. It's kind of weird that they cancelled a game that was a little bit like an Uncharted Star Wars game, and then replaced it with another Uncharted Star Wars game, if you get me. There's obviously going to be some mechanics that they'll borrow from like the previous Star Wars games, but ultimately like it just kind of seems like their attempt at making a like a slower, more meticulous Star Wars game, a la like you can see like how people compare a lot of the more slow fighting game, slow combat games to something like Dark Souls or the new God of War 3 that's come out, or even like Ubisoft Assassin's Creed. Like the new ones are more less about doing all these fast like kind of Batman style combos and being more slow paced with the combat, and that's what we're seeing. We saw a lot of cool force powers and stuff being used. There was like they did the Kylo Ren kind of like freezing the like a blast bolt midair and stuff like that. There's some cool things and there's a lot of typical like kind of puzzle elements, but the game looks good. I'm also kind of I'll throw it off a little bit because I think the voice actor is the same guy who plays it, correct? Skarsgård.
I forgot his
Something.
Skarsgård, yeah.
There's two of them. There's Skarsgård,
There's
and the thing is like
Skarsgård. There's Bill Skarsgård, which is the old scientist guy in like Thor, those Thor films,
okay.
and then there's the young kid, which is the it guy, something Skarsgård.
Yeah, well, you see that guy.
Skarsgård from True Blood.
Yeah, so the guy from It, because he looks very similar to how his character looks like in it just almost makes it look like he's a bad guy because I'm very used to because the face model looks very similar to his.
I think in general he has like one of those faces where I'm like, yeah, you'd play a good bad guy.
Yeah, he'd make a good Joker if they actually got him to do it. But yeah, so I think overall like the Fallen Order trailer kind of seems okay. Nothing too amazing. I guess we'll just have to wait for when the game comes out. Although
I say it's gonna be like a 7.5 maybe around there.
7.5.
Like it's fun, doesn't do much anything interesting, but it just exists type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, but this is the thing. Like this is the kind of game that should have came out a couple of years ago. When Disney kind of got the rights for these kind of games, because this is the kind of game that people would have wanted. But now that we've kind of, a lot of media outlets are calling it Star Wars fatigue. I don't necessarily call it Star Wars fatigue. It's just people are sick of the new kind of bad Star Wars films that are coming out. And subsequently, this is coming out in an era where people are kind of being like, do I want to buy a Star Wars game anymore? Like the hardcore people will, but I think the casual audience, not so much. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. It is definitely an improvement from the Battlefront games. So yeah, I think EA can only go up. Well, let's just hope they can only go up.
Yeah, they just keep them bombing year after year with stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it for EA, I'd say. But yeah, we can move on to Microsoft. They had, they're pretty much there in Nintendo because Sony wasn't there this year. And yeah, I think overall Microsoft's conference was pretty good. They opened up with the Outer Worlds. Which I don't know if this is still a shooter or is this a tactical RPG game.
I think this game is kind of like the spiritual successor to Fallout, because I think it's actually made by some of the people who made the original or like Fallout 3 and stuff.
Yeah, and it's Obsidian Entertainment, which is now owned by Microsoft, which I still think is really crazy, but it's kind of cool.
Microsoft has been buying up a lot of developers. As we actually found out, I think in this conference, that I think the Psychonauts was also something that was also announced.
Yeah, I forgot what
and Double Fine Studios. They're also now owned by Microsoft. I think I don't know how much of this will be a good idea because I kind of find that Double Fine's kind of production schedule for games can be very like all over the place.
Yeah, I think they even made a joke about it at the press conference where it's like, yeah, we're not relaxed at all. And I think that's kind of why they've kind of been dropped by like places like EA and things like that, because the games are like they take quite a bit of time to make, but they also don't really sell that well either. Like one of my favorites of all time is like Brutal Legend, and like that bombed. It had Jack Black and everything. That was a good game. Yeah, people like Psychonauts and other things like that, but it's like
I mean, I grew up playing Psychonauts and I played it like on my PC, but and I think I have a lot of other kind of games, but they're all these kind of like really quirky games that only have like a certain kind of niche, but unfortunately because they have that particular kind of niche, it kind of makes the development for it kind of awkward because actually was Psychonauts 2 kickstarted in any capacity? I
think so. It sounds like it almost where it was, or like actually no, I don't think it was. It was
oh no, Broken Age. Their game Broken Age was
that one. I think that one had like Elijah Wood in it or something like that. But yeah, like they pretty much have games that are just very middle ground, which kind of like the last gen, the 360 and the PlayStation 3 gen kind of killed off. Places like Earth Defense Force or like, these kind of like middling things, didn't do so well. But Yeah.
Yeah, with the Outer Worlds, it definitely does seem like a game that in spirit is very similar to something like a Fallout. It does have it kind of seems like it has like some of the humor of like because there was like a Outer Worlds trailer that was released a while ago that I saw, and we didn't really get anything too new other than the fact that okay, we get a little bit of like okay, the background of what the world is based in, but I think ultimately it'll just be kind of a more humorous Fallout, right? Like if we kind of put Fallout and Borderlands on a scale, it's going to be like in the middle-ish. And I think that's ultimately what the game will probably be. But yeah, of course. But like I said, there wasn't too much. There was gameplay, but it wasn't anything too much for us to kind of feast on.
Either way, I'm still excited because it seems
Yeah,
very
same.
interesting and it's very very much in that same kind of vein. Bleeding Edge. There was that game from Ninja Theory that they've been working on for a while, which is kind of like an Overwatch game. It looks okay, but I don't know if I'll play it. It's like
Yeah,
there's not enough time for me to play competitive games like that.
I mean, it looks interesting stylistically, but yeah, like again, they haven't really shown anything much from it, other than it looks cool, and it has a really unique art style. The thing that I've kind of found recently is there's been a bit of a trend to kind of have like a bit of a uh, I guess it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic with a dash of neon, right? Like there was a recent game that came out, the new Far Cry game that came out. That was a sequel to Far Cry 5. It
It
used
wasn't
like
like called
a
New
lot of
Dawn. Was it New Dawn?
yeah, New Dawn. That's correct. Yeah, it kind of has that kind of like Mad Max vibe, but like with a lot of like neon like hair and like bright pastel colors in it. And then like the recent I think I forget what the game is, but it was a game by Bethesda that came out and set in like
Oh, Rage 2. Yeah.
Rage 2. So yeah, Rage 2. The Rage 1 was such a like a really like that game was like propped up to be like, oh, it's gonna be revolutionary and it's gonna look amazing, but everybody saw that kind of didn't look that great and the gameplay was kind of boring. But yeah, and same with that game, like they had this kind of same thing, the same kind of boring aesthetic, but then they just put a little bit of like pink paint here and there, like, oh, we'll make the ladders bright pink. I think a lot of it kind of seems to try and ape the Borderlands kind of aesthetic, but doesn't have any of like the heart involved in it. And that's what I kind of see with the Bleeding Edge game. It kind of has that same kind of look, but we'll see whether it's any good. One of the indie games that got released is Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Now, I haven't played Ori and the Blind Forest, but I've heard good things about it. So I guess if you're a big fan of that kind of game, that's coming out with a sequel. So that
Yeah, I
looks
heard
pretty
it's pretty
cool.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my list of games to buy/play, but that list is only getting more and more extensive as things go on.
Pretty much.
Minecraft Dungeons.
That looks alright. Like a dungeon crawler,
I
Diablo light, and especially for
yeah,
like
that's what I
using the Minecraft license in a particular way. I'm like, that's pretty interesting.
I thought it was really smart. Like I guess to like maybe somebody who doesn't care too much about like the Minecraft license, which I think that Minecraft is kind of getting back its popularity. I think it recently had its like 10-year anniversary recently. Microsoft is kind of using it to its full extent. Like this is the kind of stuff that you want to use Minecraft for, and it
Not
looks pretty
Minecraft
interesting.
too.
Yeah, not Minecraft 2, which a lot of people maybe have thought is happening. But yeah, this looks pretty cool. I liked it. But yeah, I don't know whether or not like I'll pay into buying it. Like I kind of like playing the original Minecraft, which I still have the Java edition, although I think they're slowly trying to not support that anymore. But hey, that's the kind of ways things go after acquisitions. We had a trailer for Blair Witch.
Which I
Which I
thought was
thought
like
was
what Outcast, whatever that game is, that horror game I've never played. Outcast is the one where it's like you got a
yeah.
camera
I
on
think a
like
lot of people did as well. I think the thing is when I saw this game, like I think the moment that I saw like some of the imagery and when they had like the last scene where it's like there's a guy facing the corner like the Blair Witch movie, I'm like, oh, this is a Blair Witch game.
because wasn't there a
And
leak like I don't know 6 months ago that said there was a Blair Witch game? I'm just like,
was there?
why would
I
I
didn't
think
see
so?
it.
And I was just like, why on earth would someone make a game about Blair Witch? It's such a weird license.
You know what? It's a weird license, but I think it's actually a pretty good way to utilize the game. Like, if you're gonna try and have something that's kind of a horror game, like I think Blair Witch is the best one to do it because, like you said before, with that particular game that you mentioned, Blair Witch kind of uses video cameras and stuff as well. So it is a game that would probably fit into that kind of style of horror games, but it might be like a little late to catch on that particular hype, right? Like in terms of those scary games that you can kind of put on YouTube for streamers to play and get like scary acts to. But we'll see. It looks okay, but again, we're only getting like these CGI trailers for it, so we'll have to see. Now the big game that I think everybody was kind of looking forward to was the announcement of Cyberpunk 2077. We've talked about it on this podcast before, and I've been very, very excited to see where the game is going and how it's going. Just because I have a background in Dungeons and Dragons, and Cyberpunk 2020 was the original kind of Cyberpunk tabletop role playing game.
Comes out in 2020. Haha.
I did mention it in I think either last podcast or the podcast before that my prediction for the game was that they're gonna release it for 2020, not only just so they can have extra time in trying to create the game, but also to coincide with the original year in which the original game was released in. We had a really cool trailer that came out. It's a CGI trailer, but it was actually a really, really cool one.
I feel like it was definitely like in-engine type of thing, and I felt like that's kind of because because it's the same developers as The Witcher 3, and how you have like dialogue options, and it's kind of like this cinematic. I almost felt like in some of the segments of that CGI trailer, it was pretty much almost like the dialogue options would be there. They just chose it in one kind of fluid motion. So I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, definitely this game's coming out on whatever the next gen stuff is, 100%. Because like some of the stuff looked really amazing. So I'm like, oh yeah, they're definitely gonna release that, and that's probably what it's gonna look like. And it looks really good. Like, I just want to know more about. Like, it's one of those things where I very much want to know about the world. Like, I think that big 40-minute blowout was all about kind of the gameplay of it, and I feel like it's gonna be very much like in that Deus Ex kind of vein.
I think because Cyberpunk 2020 has a lot of lore, I think what's probably gonna happen with this game is they're probably gonna upscale the timeline of events that happen in the game, because I'm pretty sure because one of the big things that gets revealed at the end of this trailer is you have Keanu Reeves playing one of the side characters, one of your potential characters that you can kind of team up with. I think his name is Johnny. I think it's Johnny Silverhand. I think that's his name. And Johnny Silverhand, from my understanding, is a character from Cyberpunk 2020. So he's playing a character who has at least some kind of relation to the actual in-game lore of Cyberpunk 2020. I think just the difference is that instead of the game being set in the far future of 2020, in this game it's in the far future of 2027. And yeah, subsequently, I think the other kind of because I think so one of the best theories that I've read online is that to essentially having Keanu as a friend or a companion is based on who you have as your because I don't know if you remember the 40-minute gameplay where they showed you the character creation. One of the things that they ask you is who your childhood hero was, and stuff like that. And he refers to your character as Samurai in the trailer, and the Samurais I think was like a band. And Johnny Silverhand is a part of that band. So the thing is, I think if you want to know more about Cyberpunk, it's already there. Currently online, you can probably read it up. But I think the problem with that is the fact that it might spoil aspects of the game, because it'll probably be borrowing story beats from the actual vast amount of content that the Cyberpunk 2020 lore has. So I think that'll probably be the one thing that they probably don't want to spoil too much about. But I think they actually kind of spoiled a little bit already, because they showed one of the characters who essentially dies in the car after a big kind of a heist. He's a character
with
who
the chip, and I like he looked like a kind of mainish type character.
well, his character is actually one of the characters that they show during the 40-minute gameplay demo.
Hmm. Oh, maybe
He's
there's
one of,
branching paths. You know, maybe
yeah,
they're doing that.
I think there's definitely branching paths, but one of the things is because also Lady Gaga is in this game as well, and so the thinking behind it is, oh, maybe Keanu, Lady Gaga, and maybe like another celebrity might be like one of the three heroes that you can potentially idolize and therefore eventually work with throughout the games. That's the current rumor that I've read online about, which I kind of love. And if it is the case, it'll be fantastic. The other thing I want to point out is, they did have Keanu come out on stage, talking about, Cyberpunk and how he's excited for it. And I think one of the crowd was, he said like, oh, the game is absolutely breathtaking. And one of the crowd members said, "You're breathtaking," which
Means
kind of
it's
led to
serious.
him having which led to him having a huge smile and kind of pointing back at the crowd and being like, "You're all breathtaking."
Which that's the thing. It's like he was having fun. I think since the beginning, like he was walking on stage, he was kind of laughing through a little bit, like at the start, or like the way he announced like Cyberpunk, where he's like Cyberpunk, like the way he does it. I'm like, yeah, this guy's just having a lot of fun. Because like, and he's talking about like how he chooses stories and stuff like that. Where I'm like, it's actually really funny. Like he's chosen like two like things and then three including this that would be like about cyberpunk type of stuff. Like you got the Matrix, which is about plugging into things, technology or like automation and robots. And then you've got a movie that most people don't know about, like in the 90s, called Johnny Mnemonic.
I know of it. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like very much kind of like reliving memories, chips and heads and things like that. And basically chose this. So I feel like he's very much likes this sci-fi type of stuff, and like I feel I can feel the genuineness coming from it. And yeah, Keanu came out. He was having a lot of fun.
Actually,
awesome.
before we kind of go on, with Johnny Mnemonic, is it essentially what is that movie about? Is it about like a AI in a chip or something?
I think what it was is in the future everyone has like the humans, but they have these kind of chips, and they can like it's obviously you're plugged in or whatever. And I think the whole thing was he got a chip that he wasn't supposed to get, or like he was the delivery. It's kind of like Fallout New Vegas, where like oh yeah, you're just the delivery boy for this thing that this criminal organization wanted, and then basically just leave you for dead, almost. And I think that's what it kind of was. It was something along those lines, where I remember the chip being vital, or like memories being vital.
I mean, it's kind of funny that like he's kind of gone from this Johnny Pneumatic character who was like, I guess, a man in a chip to now being a chip in a man's brain. Like that's kind of what he is now with it's all kind of come full circle with Cyberpunk 2077. I think I'm very excited for this game. He looks awesome in game from the cinematic they showed, and it only gets me more excited for the game itself. So I definitely am looking forward to Cyberpunk.
And gameplay looked a lot like, I don't know, not gameplay, but it actually looks a lot better. Like I don't know, just visually looks better, and the music, as far as I remember, sounds pretty good. So
yeah. Now the follow-up for Cyberpunk was a game called Spiritfarer. Now I don't know what this game is, but it looks pretty cool. I like the art style, and I dug like a little bit of the trailer for it. It's all hand drawn by two artists who are on the team. So I think depending on where the game kind of goes moving forward, I might be interested in picking that particular game up. But I don't really have too much to say other than that. Battletoads is coming out, unironically. Yeah. Look, I just like Battletoads as a meme, not necessarily as a game. But for all the people who are kind of wanting to play like a new version of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle styled kind of game, like the old arcade game, like this is kind of what you want. Hopefully, it's not that like as stupid, ridiculously hard as the original Battletoads game, but I guess we'll have to see.
the memes.
There's
But yeah, there's
yeah.
like I don't know. There was a few random indie titles. One that didn't get that wasn't there from last year. I think is the one where it looked like Zelda and it was like a fox and it was like a dungeon thing. I remember seeing that and I'm like, that looks cool. Didn't see it, but or like that other game that was almost kind of like Cyberpunky as well, where it was like a 2D indie game that was kind of like a neo noir type of game.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Last
I do
Night or
remember
something like that.
the
It's
last
something.
night. Yeah, I'm not too sure whatever happened to that game. That game looks so cool
Yeah, so I'm hoping all these things do pop up at some point because I'd definitely
at
play
some
them.
point.
But yeah, they pretty
But
much skipping a little bit forward, we've got the flight simulator, which is not really like it's a game.
yeah,
For
it's a game.
segment of
You know,
people, but it did look amazing because they're just like
it did
showing
look
real
good.
4K stuff, and it does look like it's actually the damn footage.
Hmm.
So that was interesting if you're ever interested in that. And then they announced the kind of gameplay for Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, which I didn't know much the difference compared to that in the HD edition. I don't know. I'm more
Yeah,
excited for
I'm.
Age of Empires 4 than Age of Empires 2
I don't.
Remastered.
I don't know if they'll ever do an Age of
No,
Empires 4. I guess
they announced it.
this year or in
They
the
announced it like
or
early last year, I think, and like
oh,
even
okay.
just a recent news report just said, yeah, it's coming smoothly. It will come out maybe the end of this year, or like more details will come out at the end of this year. So I'm more excited about that because because Age of Empires 1 was like Nomad, Age of Empires 2 was kind of medieval time, and Age of Empires
Mhm.
3 was kind of like I don't know that colonial
And
kind of
and and
period.
and you're missing out on one of the better
What, Age of
ones, which is Age of
Mythologies?
Mythology. I loved Age of Mythology. I loved the shit out of that game. I should get it on Steam because there is like I think there's like a HD edition on that too. But hey, for all I know, there might be another super duper edition that's coming out. Like, that's the thing I'm kind of a little bit confused about. If there is one on Steam, I've got it, but if they're going to release another one, doesn't that kind of split the player base a little bit, like in terms of which edition you want to go for? But yeah, I guess
Mm.
we'll just have to see. Wasteland 3, now I haven't played any of the Wasteland games, but for people who are interested in that, there's a game
They
coming
look
out.
like my type of game. It's just a strategy, top down, kind of isometric, like XCOM, Fire Emblem
XCOM
type
is.
game.
Hmm.
I just don't have time for like a lot of those games. Like I haven't played any Wastelands, so I'm like I could be interested in this. I don't have time.
Yeah.
As mentioned before, Psychonauts 2, it looks very, I don't know, it doesn't look that good when it comes to like graphic side of things, but I think it has this particular cartoony style,
Yeah.
and I think people who just really are into Psychonauts, it's a sequel, so it's a thing that you'd never think you would get, like Beyond Good
Hmm.
and Evil 2, which didn't get announced either, didn't get
Didn't get
shown this
announced,
year
yeah.
either.
Um, yeah, well, yeah, I guess we'll see how good Psychonauts 2 is. I think it looks good. But whether or not it's worth this kind of I don't know when the last one was released, but I want to say like 6 years ago, right?
Yeah,
Like
wasn't
whether
it
it's
like 2005 or something? I don't know.
5, so 10 plus years ago, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it was a long time ago. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like whether or not it's worth that kind of wait, we'll have to see. Now, another game that kind of came out that I was actually kind of interested in is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Now, it's kind of interesting to see that they're kind of officially calling the first 9 movies the Skywalker Saga.
It very much is
Purely-
telling that like what they're trying, like future Star Wars movies. It kind of links it in almost, where they're just like, this is the Skywalker stuff. But I think the main one, what you're trying to get at is the sequel movies. They like have Luke Skywalker for like literally one movie and he dies. And then obviously the
yeah.
last movie is called Rise of the Skywalker. So it's kind of like it brings back the theory of either it's Kylo or it's Rey being a Skywalker in the end.
Well, I mean, Kylo is the Skywalker.
Yeah, but like not officially. He doesn't call himself
Not
a Skywalker.
officially.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. With this Skywalker saga, for me, them calling it the Skywalker saga is them kind of being like, okay, we're gonna have to try and put a lid on the legacy of the Star Wars, like trilogies, right? Like plural, because it's kind of hampering down on the creativity and the way Disney wants to kind of move forward with the franchise as a whole in the future, and that's why they're kind of separating and being like, okay, this section is the Skywalker saga, and so anything forward probably won't have anything to do with the Skywalkers, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But it is something that I find really interesting. But the thing with the Lego Star Wars games are that they used to be like a kind of direct adaptation of the games, sorry, of the movies. But the thing that Lego has been doing recently, I don't know if you've seen the older kind of Lego Lord of the Rings. They literally did the entire movie in Lego, but they did it in a humorous way, like when certain people died, it was like done in a more like kind of humorous way, and certain events is more playful. So it'd be interesting to see how they kind of go about doing the previous Star Wars movies and have them all integrated into one game. The thing is, the game will be huge if they're actually doing all 9 games, including a movie that isn't technically out yet. So we'll see how that goes forward. I'm kind of excited for it, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, actually, another game that I'm excited for is Dragon Ball Kakarot. They always bring out a lot of Dragon Ball games, a lot of Naruto games, yada yada yada. But like this one, I feel like is kind of like like what the Dragon Ball Budokai games were, or almost like I think Naruto Rise of a Ninja. Those 2 games where essentially there's a story mode, but it's very authentic. Like they basically remake scenes of the anime into the game graphics engine, and kind of like go throughout the whole like arc of the stories, including some random stuff as well. So I feel like that's kind of like a cool thing, and it could be something I could get into, because I haven't played the Dragon Ball Z Fighter game, or haven't been to the Dragon Ball Universe games, or whatever the hell they were. Like I don't know, it's been a long time since I played an anime type game.
You see, the thing with my problem with Dragon Ball FighterZ Kakarot, it was Project Z, that's what it originally was titled under, is that it doesn't seem to do anything that's kind of as interesting. Like, Budokai and stuff was like, oh, cool, we're going to put all these Dragon Ball Z games in 3D cel-shaded graphics and retell the classic Dragon Ball Z story. Even in the later Budokai games, because my cousins had it, they kind of did like alternate futures or alternate history stuff, where you played a story mode that kind of had a different conclusion to what the anime had. It kind of just seems to be another repeat of that kind of stuff. If it's going to be like a Budokai game, it's going to look and play exactly the same. I kind of hoped that it had like a different system, because they did refer to it as like an RPG game. Not necessarily that it has to be a turn-based RPG, as much as I'd actually love it. There was actually a really great game. I forget what it's called now, but it was on the 3DS. That was a Dragon Ball Z game that was like a turn-based game where you had a screen, and you Kamehameha was like a special attack and stuff, and you fought like random mobs, like like it would be on a Final Fantasy styled game. Being an RPG, like what makes it an RPG? The fact that you can find random equips and attach them to your Dragon Ball characters. Are they going to be in a party? That's the thing. And then they're also on top of it are showing like the classic Namekian saga, Frieza saga on Namek. Again, it seems to be a lot of them kind of banking on the nostalgia, which will sell the game really well. Like, who grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, including myself, a lot of those people will just buy this game because, I grew up playing it. But it doesn't, for me personally, I'm not as interested until I see more gameplay. If it's going to be something that's going to be more RPG centric, like like the new Final Fantasy game that's coming out, maybe I might be more interested in it. But if it's going to be like another Budokai game, and it's going to go through everything up to the Frieza saga again, it's like what's new about it other than the fact that it's going to be on a new engine, right?
Yeah.
At least try and at least show like it's going to go, it's a long ass game, and it's going to go all the way up to like the Buu saga, or maybe it goes into Dragon Ball Super level. It's probably not, but I'm just saying, like, give me something better than the stuff that you've already been releasing in the past decade. With Dragon Ball FighterZ, a great game, a fantastic game. If you like fighting games, it's mechanically, everything's there. If you like Dragon Ball Z, every not every character, but every fan favorite character is there, and you can play them, and they all feel unique. and
But what
it's
about
really.
Tien and Chiaotzu?
I don't know if Tien's in it. I guess he isn't, but you know, who cares? It's
No,
Tien.
no one cares. They always died straight away. They were cannon fodder.
Actually, Tien's a bit of a boss. The one thing that they kind of do better with the Ball Super series is like bring back like a lot of characters that were kind of sidelined in Dragon Ball Z and make him, you know, like in focus. Like if you kind of think about it, like Krillin is kind of one of the strongest humans on the planet. Like he went toe to toe with one of the Cell Juniors. Like none of the other characters was capable of doing that. Tien is like a really sick character, and Master Roshi is really really useful in like the big tournament they're having. But anyways, look, my main thing is show me more about Dragon Ball Kakarot. That makes me interested in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on. 12 minutes. This looks like a
Ooh,
cool little indie game that
yeah,
looks
this looks
awesome.
like this looks like a Chowder's game right here because I kind of love games that kind of it definitely seems like it's focusing a little bit on like this Groundhog Day mechanic. Like maybe there's some time travel, maybe there's some time loops that you're in, and certain actions you take might change the future. Might help you learn more information that'll help you solve the story. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things. I highly recommend the 12 minutes trailer to kind of give a little bit of an insight of what the game is. Hopefully, like I'm kind of taking the trailer for what I expect the graphics to be in the game itself. So it's simplistic. It's a little like indie-ish title. Yeah, I kind of like this game and I look forward to it.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. Way of the Woods just looks like a deer doing stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
Looks interesting though. But yeah,
yes, yeah. Like I don't know. Like it just seems like a really uh it could be like a walking simulator. That's my only problem with it, right? Like
yeah,
you know,
there'll be puzzles and stuff, but yeah, it'll kind of be it's a journey, like that game
yeah.
Journey. Like
Like
yeah,
it's like a cool aesthetic kind of game, and it does look cool. We'll admit.
yeah. But yeah,
Gears
Gears
5.
5, I'm pretty
Mm,
hyped. They didn't show gameplay, but they
okay.
did show gameplay in the stage demos, like I was mentioning before, like IGN does. Looks really good. The engine looks amazing. If spoilers for Gears, if you're ever interested in it, or didn't play Gears 4, the main character of this one is Kate. And at the end of Gears 4, you find out that she's like basically half human and half locust, and the locusts are pretty much the bad guys from like the bad race from the last games and all the other games. So
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a very interesting, that's a very interesting detail about her journey and where she's going. And yeah, I'm purely
Yeah, is
hyped
she
for it as
good? Is
well.
she bad? I kind of find it interesting that they kind of officially did they call Gears 4 Gears 4?
I think they call it Gears. I don't know, but yeah, I think they just call it Gears of War 4, but this one's just Gears 5.
Gears 5. It's kind of interesting that they are just kind of
They
slowly
choose the
shrinking the name
nickname.
down.
They
Yeah,
choose the
yeah. They
nickname.
kind
People
well,
call it.
it's a fan given nickname, right? It's what the fans ended up calling it. I was never really big on the Gears of War games, but obviously, like it kind of seems like they're doing a bit of I don't know if you ever played like any of the Starcraft games, but one of the characters, Kerrigan, ends up being like kind of a hybrid between like the some of the kind of locust kind of late locust type race in the Starcraft universe.
Yeah,
So it
Blizzard
seems
does
like they
that a
kind of
lot, with all their
yeah.
characters like Arthas, always struggling between be good and bad. Like,
No, well, I mean, Arthas is just straight up bad. Let's face it.
it's
Um,
always funny they do that. But
yeah.
yeah, they did that. They showed Dying Light 2, just a trailer. I'm still
Mhm.
psyched for it, even though they didn't show much of it. But
Much of it.
Dying Light, that was pretty much the first game I think of this generation that I really fell in love with. It's really great. It's
It looks
basically
really cool.
it basically replaced Dead Island, because Dead Island
Yeah,
just disappeared, and Dead Island 2 is apparently still happening. But
yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know. I think they've missed their their deadline for that game for people to be excited about it. Dying Light kind of does the whole kind of parkour, fighting zombies first person. Like, oh, it looks really cool. The original game I didn't get the opportunity to play. But again, a lot of the things about this E3 kind of remind me there's a lot of games I need to either play or finish playing in order to get me hyped up about the next one. So I might have to catch up on Dying Light 2 in order to justify. Sorry, Dying Light in order to play Dying Light 2. Yeah, I guess there's the Forza stuff. I actually didn't mind the trailer. I don't play. The last racing game I remember playing was probably Burnout. The one that came after 3.
So like Paradise.
Paradise, yeah. Burnout Paradise was like probably the last racing game I played. And prior to that would have probably been like the Need for Speed Underground games. Because I love those.
Good series.
I love those games. Good, great, fantastic series.
But yeah, Lego, it's kind of
just it looked cool, but probably won't play it.
No, it's a racing game. Gears Pop, which is a mobile game, which is kind of sad, but I hope they
looked kind of.
But it looked interesting. Yeah, I guess.
The new Xbox Elite 2 controller. Now I'm a little bit pissed because I recently bought a Xbox controller to play on my PC, and this new one that came out looks dope.
Yeah, I have heard that these controllers, or even I think I've heard that this generations of Xbox controllers will work on whatever the next generation is. It'll just be different because that's the thing. I think they'll move obviously to USB-C 3, but that will be the end connection. So like either way, I'm very happy that I don't have to like buy a new set of controllers every single generation these days.
Exactly. Well, you know what? They're kind of catching up on the whole Nintendo thing, right? Nintendo used to do a lot of the whole like, oh, there's some hardware that you can use on the next gen in some capacity. So I guess that's kind of a cool thing.
There's expansion for State of Decay 2, which is an okay zombie kind of game, that you take out houses, clear it out, loot. It's kind of the same old.
You're a biker. Let's see,
Fantasy Star Online 2. I think that's a big deal for certain people. I never liked the Fantasy Star series, even just the normal RPGs. I just kind of hate it. There was a trailer for Crossfire, which I have no idea what this game is. It's just a random military thing.
I can't say I'm too like interested in it either. But again, if again, we need to see more gameplay. And that's the kind of, all these kind of cool promotional stuff. It's really like interesting, but maybe have the promotional stuff alongside some gameplay, release like 2 trailers,
Well, that's the thing. They showed Tales of Arise, which is from the Tales RPG series. That did have gameplay, and that's very much a JRPG like niche. Like, you got Star Ocean, you got Tales games, and yeah, it looks all right. They showed a trailer for Borderlands 3, which I was pretty much already going to get. I know pretty much more or less about this game, and it's back to form finally.
Yeah, well, I mean, people have been waiting for Borderlands 3 for a while, but I think the other big thing that came out is that there's a new expansion for Borderlands 2 called Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary, which is the bridge between Borderlands 2 to Borderlands 3, which is currently free on all platforms at the moment, but I think it's only free for a week.
Yeah, it's pretty much for the week, which, like everyone's like, oh man, it's crazy. They built something for Borderlands 2, a game that came out ages ago. But I'm like, but I know because I follow this Borderlands page on Facebook, and I think it's an official page. They to this day still, because in Borderlands 2 you had these like keys that you'd put into the crates and get special. You'd pretty much always get good loot if you put they still support that.
The golden keys.
Yeah, every single week or whatever it is. Well, they have these keys that they bring out. So I was very interested.
I think it's one thing to have like, support through like a random generation of keys, but I think it's another thing to have a expansion for a game that came out like what I want to say 2012, right? 2000. Yeah, like it's kind of it's a cool thing to do, and the fact that they also made it free, which kind of also gets people excited to go back and play Borderlands 2, which is what I'm currently doing. I'm currently playing on Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and I'm kind of going through all the expansions that I didn't get to play, and I'm probably going to be playing the Fight for Sanctuary last. Now, another game that they also only showed a trailer for was Elden Ring, which is the new game that's coming out by From Software, who are the makers of famous games such as Bloodborne and Dark Souls. The big thing about this game is that it's also written by, or at least has some oversight by George R. R. Martin, from Game of Thrones fame.
Yeah, which is kind of really funny. It's like you had to choose. You had to call the series or something like about a ring. You're a fantasy writer and it's about rings. I'm like, man, like you could have chose any other object and you had to go back to a ring. Like there's already, it's like there's so many things you could do.
Well, I mean, he's probably going to do his own. Maybe this is his own version of Lord of the Rings. The one where it's more dark and it's more dreary and stuff. But yeah, there's a cool trailer for it, but no gameplay. Some of the kind of good thing about doing a little bit of a recap for E3 is there's a lot more information that's kind of come out since these conferences have come out, and from what I understand, it's going to be an open world kind of game from Software, more so than like the previous kind of games. So that's going to obviously be cool, but we'll just have to wait to see more stuff from that. They talked about Project Scarlet, which is the up and coming Xbox, new Xbox that's coming in. Like it's supposed to have support for 120 hertz. And it's gotten a chip that's 4 times faster than the previous AMD chip. So, I mean, there's a lot of kind of stuff, but there's not that they talked about. But I think this is where kind of Microsoft should have kind of done a little bit more to kind of push the concept of the next generation of consoles. Like I very much know, you mentioned it earlier that, they're kind of holding everything off for next year or next E3. Given that Microsoft had a bit of a, had everyone's attention this year with Sony not being in the room, and especially since Sony kind of didn't do anything last year, right? Like they didn't really have any really big...
like last year Sony is kind of like they had like that 2 samurai games. They had I think Spider-Man before it got released and a few other things, but that was kind of it. And I think everyone was
and then they also had that dude playing a flute for
20 minutes. It reminds me of Sony in the PlayStation 3 days where it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Just stop. Like no one cares about sales analysis in like E3 or something like that. So yeah, it very much reminded me of that. But they're definitely going to be announcing more stuff. I think next year, like they'll have their own streaming kind of thing, or they'll do a whole thing at E3 and definitely reveal the price and things like that. I feel like a lot of big players will be going onto that, and like that's what everyone's gonna be working on right now. But yeah, they had the whole sizzle reel where it had like stuff like Todd Howard and a few all these people being like, yeah, this is amazing like technology and it's gonna be awesome, which probably will be.
I guess. Well, look, again, I want to just see more things. Now, something that they did show a bit about is a new trailer for Halo Infinite, which I think a lot of people are looking forward to. The trailer. Yeah, and look, the thing about this game is I'm very, very impressed by the kind of Halo fandom, being able to kind of pick up certain things from certain cues, from just this trailer alone about when this game is set, right? With Halo Infinite, we kind of see a character or some guy. I haven't played the game since Halo 3. And from what I understand, a lot of people said that's kind of a good thing because Halo 4 and 5 aren't that great.
I think Halo 4 had a good story. The multiplayer wasn't good, and then Halo 5 didn't have a good story, but the multiplayer was good. So it's like they need they need one where it's like both perfect.
Both things are good. Well, the thing is, I heard like you don't even get to play Master Chief. Like you play him like 3 times,
like 3 or 4 times.
The Halo 5.
It reminds me of
Halo
kind of
5
what they did with like Halo 2. Where they're just like, oh, he's like, yeah, I'm going to finish the fight. It's like, oh, cool, last mission. And it just ends, and I was like, huh. I guess.
Yeah, but Halo 2 was actually cool. Halo 2 was actually cool. I haven't heard great things about Halo 5 outside of, as you mentioned, the online multiplayer. And the thing with Infinite is it seems to be something that they're kind of going back to the basics about. From what I understand about some of the news that has kind of come out, is that like 5 or so ish years after the event of the last game. I think part of that is due to you can tell. I think they mentioned like when Master Chief is booting up, it shows like something along the lines of his armor was last modified in like X year. And
or as well as the just no AI found, which is like a
yeah,
little
no, AI
sugar
fans
little tier.
obviously.
So it's like
Yeah, so obviously it's
yeah, they're bringing back the Halo 1 vibes, and I feel like
mm,
everyone's early speculation of this game is going to be a little bit more open worldy, almost like the level
well,
design of what is it, the first Halo, almost, where like when you first go on the Halo ring, it was a big mission because it split off, and it's a big map kind of thing. So I think they're going to try to do that.
well, you see, here's the thing. From what I understand, Cortana is spoilers for anybody who hasn't played Halo or whatever, because they are going to be releasing the Halo collection that's coming out, which is going to be really cool. I think I'll be interested to getting all those games purely just for the story, because I really really love Halo the story. And then now that you can play it competitively on a mouse and keyboard, officially, I say you can play it unofficially.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be cool to kind of have those games and be supported online. So I'm looking forward to that. But the thing about this game, for what I understand, is after the events of either 4 or 5, you can kind of back me up as our channel's lore.
It would be 5.
It'll be 5 when Cortana ends up becoming the big bad.
Yes, pretty much. Because like
Yeah.
4, the whole story of that is that after a certain time, the AIs kind of
go crazy, right?
and have to get out of commission. And kind of Cortana's just kind of been kept alive this whole time because, like, Master Chief's like, nah. So then,
I'm not going to kill you.
Basically, she kind of goes rogue and crazy and controls the Prometheans. And now she has pretty much full control of Halo rings. So she can pretty much destroy the whole universe.
Well, yeah, you see that's the thing that I kind of found pretty funny, that like a lot of the it's kind of interesting in Halo lore in and of itself that they created these rings to basically save kind of creatures from other planets, but also use them like kind of like a Noah's Ark kind of thing, but then also to use them as a weapon to destroy planets that are infected by the flood. But now a rogue AI is potentially using it to wipe out all life. Is that kind of like what's happening? Is that the story beats more or less?
Pretty much, but like this one's gonna very much wrap up everything. I feel like even though
you reckon?
You kind of thought that with 3. I feel like this might be a one, and then they might do something different in a different age. Because it very much feels like Master Chief has to be pretty much the one that kills like Cortana. The one that has kind of made him like semi-human or understands him the most. And I feel like that's where it's coming to a head, and I feel like that's a story that I really want to know more than anything. Like multiplayer is probably going to be going to be good.
Yeah.
I don't.
And let's face it, if you don't like the Halo Infinite multiplayer, there's going to be like 6 other games that you can probably play the multiplayer for. Microsoft's going to have your back in like, oh, you want to play with overpowered pistols that can zoom in and headshot people and kill them after 2 shots? Boom, here's your game, right? You can play in whatever.
Gears of War, wasn't it?
No, I'll talk about the first Halo, Combat Evolved.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. But Gears of War has like that game.
Did they have an overpowered pistol as well?
They do. It's called the Boltok, and it's just like
okay.
It just gets you right on the head. You're like, well, I'm dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No. I'm purely going after the original game, because I remember that being, it's like, why do you need any other weapon when you have this game?
You're playing the Master Chief Collection. You play multiplayer with all those games. First
exactly.
Halo, everyone just uses the pistol, and you just get sniped far away. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly. So it would be interesting to see having access to all those games. Now they're going to be releasing them, like they're going to drip feed release them. I'm not too sure what the price differential will be for games here in Australia, but from what I understand is it's going to be 10 USD. So that sounds like a pretty good price for anybody who's interested in the game, because I think it ends up besides I think I want to say ODST. I think ODST is $5. So I think total all 6 games priced up to be 55 USD. So I think that's an excellent deal for games that have been like iconic within kind of the
Gaming for
Xbox
past 11.
blogosphere.
I think
Yeah.
just gaming in general. I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
what.
gaming in general, but now we have like a whole new generation of people that are gonna have access to it because they're gonna be on their PCs.
Mm.
And I think and to kind of wrap it up, I think that's the one thing I kind of really liked about the Xbox conference is a lot of the games that they're promoting, a lot of the games that people are interested in, it's not going to be purely exclusive to the Xbox flagship. And as somebody who's like, a big PC person, I kind of really liked that because I can now play Halo 4 and 5. I think that's going to be maybe part of the Master Chief Collection that may be coming out. I'm not too sure. But yeah, like I can play those games, and it's going to be something that I can catch up with and kind of fall in love with Halo all over again. That's all I ever wanted. I think Microsoft is kind of being the and they're kind of forced to be because they've kind of fallen behind in the console, like console wars, right? That have been happening. They have to be the ones. They have to be the ones to kind of be more open to cross-platform
Well,
play.
yeah, they've got
been
the cross-play. They've got the streaming
yeah.
services.
They're having the backwards
They've got all the
compatibility.
backwards compatible, which I think is just going to be standard nowadays. Like,
Yeah, but the thing
next
is,
gen thing is like you're going to play original Xbox 360, One, and whatever the new stuff is, all in one console.
yeah, with the new streaming stuff that they've introduced, the one thing I'll say, like part of the reason why they had to move into this kind of pro consumer kind of tactics is because they have been losing to Sony, and this is also why Sony has been more reluctant to try and do all the cross play stuff. But it's going to be standard in the future, so it would be interesting to see where it goes moving forward. But yeah, and I guess that's the Microsoft kind of conference.
Yeah,
Moved
the only
on.
thing I really want to touch on is like there were rumors and there's a lot of stuff, but I think a lot of them are true. They just don't show it until whatever the next announcement is. For example, Playground Games, they're the guys who do Forza. They made a second team. They had a whole hiring thing about we want to make an RPG, and everyone's kind of like it's basically Fable. Everyone's just saying they're gonna do Fable or reboot Fable. They didn't show it obviously, but everyone's just like, yeah, this is gonna come out. So at some point, I think they'll announce Fable or like a new Banjo maybe, but more about Banjo later on.
Yeah, more about that. Hey, no spoilerinas
just
yet.
No spoilers. But basically moving on to Bethesda, they had to make up from last year, and
okay. So the first thing I was gonna say, like, I'm not too interested in Elder Scrolls Blades. Or the online Elsewhere, like all this kind of stuff is just like it's all these kind of Skyrim light games. They're not gonna ever be anywhere near as interesting as the new Elder Scrolls 6, which is what people actually want from these people. But one of the big things that they announced was Fallout 76 Year 2. Now, what did you think about this particular announcement? Some of the things
I thought obviously it's a makeup from what they what people wanted, because like me and my friends we played Fallout 76, like we enjoyed it. There's some bugs, but
some bugs,
some. That's the thing. I think majority of those do come from other players duplicating items, and then it makes the server crash. And I think they just didn't oh crap, we got to stop that. So that's kind of like people on other people's end. If there's a glitch, they'll obviously abuse
it. People can only hack a game if it's poorly made, and I think ultimately that's kind of the thing with Fallout 76. I think the big backlash towards the game from last year, or did it come out earlier this year? I'm not too.
It came out
forgetting.
Like last year in
October.
Last year. That's why they have to make up for all this.
You see, here's the thing that I kind of find a little bit pathetic from not from the Bethesda side, really, right? Is they're like, finally we're gonna have human NPCs. We're gonna have all these things that are just standard in previous Fallout games, and everybody's just cheering for it.
It's pathetic.
It's pathetic that people were cheering for it. Again, the thing with E3 is that a lot of it are kind of you have a lot of industry people, you have a lot of people who are not necessarily they're fans, but not in kind of like traditional sense where you have like people who are going to be just directly consuming your product. Like some of these people are industry insiders and people who develop games, right? So there's a lot of cheering because they're like, oh yay, like this. But I think if this had been like a it kind of reminds me of all the stuff that happened at like the Blizzard announcement for one of the games on mobiles where people are like, is this a joke, right? Like who's gonna yeah, am I a joke to you? Because it's like, who's gonna be playing this game? And I kind of felt like this is like, finally, we're gonna make characters not be robots. We're not gonna be lazy with this game. We've had a bunch of we had a bunch of video game developers in the basement constantly being whipped to create Fallout 76 Year 2 just for you. I guess it's good that it's free. But we'll see if it kind of washes the bad taste that Fallout 76 had on consumers initially buying the game. Maybe this might lead to more people buying it, because I'm not really too sure how the expansion will work. Like, is it going to be like a direct thing that's going to just kind of...
I think it's just going to automatically update, because they've updated the game before with like you can sell your own plans, vendors, like rare items to other players. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's going to be something like a Rust or something like that type of thing where they're just going to automatically update it and just add extra stuff. But basically that's what they kind of need to do with this game. And it's, as mentioned before, this is definitely going to try to be their game that's going to last them like 8 years, type of game as a service almost, so long as there's people playing it and there's going to be updated content kind of to keep the money in microtransactions alive, which is fine. But yeah, moving on, we got Ghostwire Tokyo, which is a game from, I think, Tango Gameworks. They did Evil Within 1 and 2, which I really love those games, especially number 2. I feel like it's very underrated. And this guy, it's headed by Hideki Kamiya, who is the guy who basically started Resident Evil, like the first Resident Evil game, and kind of moved on, and then Resident Evil 4, and then basically just started his own kind of studio. And I very much love his game style. And this one is pretty much like it's horror, but it's not in the same kind of vein. It's like, what if like the Thanos snap happened in like Tokyo, and then you have to hunt ghosts. That's as far as I know, and I think most people know because there was only a trailer. But it looks kind of interesting, and either way, I'm going to keep my eyes on it. But yeah, aside from that,
I mean, I kind of thought what was happening is like people aren't being Thanos snapped, but it's kind of like the biblical example of people going to heaven, right? Like people kind of leave behind their clothing, and that's why there's people's clothes everywhere. Is because like they've kind of ascended to heaven. But I guess I don't know if it's a horror. That kind of makes sense. That they call it an action adventure game. So who knows? Fighting ghosts and stuff sounds pretty interesting. Yeah, it looks cool. But what's important? I need gameplay. That's what I need.
You need that gameplay.
I need that gameplay. Yeah, to be honest, there's not really much.
Yeah, there's not really much. It's just like Wolfenstein, Youngblood looks like okay, more Wolfenstein, and like
Deathloop seems interesting.
Deathloop
but
is interesting because it's from Arcane, which I love their games. Like Prey, I really love. Dishonored 1 and 2 also, I really love those games. So I pretty much give that studio always a pass, and like no matter what they make, I'll probably buy it.
Yeah, it looks like a really like interesting concept, but again, like it almost like you could almost tell me that this is a trailer for a TV show, and I would believe you, right? Like it almost doesn't come off like there's a video game. But again, it is another game that is kind of focusing on this kind of weird time travel-ish kind of mechanic, or this kind of looper, or what else? This it's doing their own kind of game that I forget what they're called. Essentially, games that
Day type of thing.
Yeah, Groundhog's Day, or any other kind of game that kind of has like a short lifespan. Like you have like one life, and you have to do as much as you can before you die. Like it kind of seems to be that kind of game.
Yeah.
There's also Doom Eternal. We've seen stuff about this game. I haven't played the new reboot, but the new reboot looks really cool.
Have you not played the 2006 version, or whatever it is?
Oh, no. The reboot of this game that didn't come out in 2006. Doom, yeah, the first
2016.
game. Right? Oh, 2016. Yeah.
No,
I haven't played it.
Yeah.
No, I haven't played it, but it looks really cool.
Man, I thought most people play that game. No, it's really
No,
it's really cool, really cool. But yeah, I'm excited. It's more Doom.
more
Um,
Doom, exactly. That's all you want. More
yeah, it's
Doom.
pretty much the first one was good, so just repeat the formula. But yeah,
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
kind of
Man,
yeah.
it kind of reminds me of the meme, which is man literally too angry to die. That's all. That's the one thing that I kind of always kind of associate with the new kind of Doom games, because that's literally what it looks like. He's really angry and he hates demons. That's all you need.
That's all. That's all you want. You
Um,
want those silent protagonists.
um, Now, one of the next conferences that came up was the Devolver conference. There's only really two games that I've kind of seen from this conference that seems interesting. The first one's called Carrion, which is essentially kind of like a reverse horror game. You play as the kind of vicious monster that got unleashed in a lab, and you're basically trying to like get out of the facility and kill guards and flamethrower men and basically anti monster things within this lab. And yeah, it kind of seems really interesting. It's got like the 2D spriting or sprites for it, so it looks really cool. The other game is an expansion on a game called The Messenger. It's essentially like this ninja game where it's compare it to like other games such as like Shovel Knight and its ilk. Like it's kind of like the modern Metroidvania style kind of game. And this the expansion is called Picnic Panic, which looks really cool. It got this kind of neon 80s aesthetic to it. So yeah. Again, Devolver does a pretty good job with the kind of games that it publishes. So if you're interested in those kind of games, check it out. I liked what they showed. But to kind of move on to the PC gaming show,
Mm-hmm.
again, not too many games that I'm super duper excited about. I actually played Evil Genius, the first one, on PC. I think I got it on a CD as well. It's just like you're essentially like this like a mad genius Bond villain, and you basically have to like make your own base. And fight against secret agents or stuff like that who try and like invade your base. That's essentially it, and it seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a sequel to it. Seems interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll
Well,
just
that's
have
the
to
thing.
see more gameplay for
Well,
it.
I'm more excited about Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines
Masquerade.
number 2.
Hmm.
I think because if you're a hardcore RPG person, I think everyone knows this game, and I guess the
Yeah.
lineage of like how broken it was and how many patches there are, fan made ones
Hmm.
to make it work and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I saw
Yeah.
gameplay. It looks okay. Obviously, I don't expect the studio to be that big to make it look like it's like Witcher style kind of game. But so far, I'm very interested still. I think the main reason why people like this franchise and why they keep coming back is very much the world and how they've kind of
Yeah.
built up the lore with these vampires and things like that.
Well, yeah, Vampire the Masquerade is also a tabletop RPG as well, so it does have a lot of like in-game lore that they've used for the original game. But then on top of that, they've also kind of continued it on for this game. I think I know somebody who actually does their like kind of D&D, but it's like it's Vampire the Masquerade. That's what they play. So it's cool to see them kind of continue on and make this. I think the 5th edition for Vampire the Masquerade came out last year. So yeah, if you're interested in playing, kind of tabletop RPGs, check out Vampire the Masquerade, the tabletop RPG.
Will do.
Um,
But yeah, other than that, I'm not quite sure what else to talk about when it comes to their conference.
yeah, I mean, I
Like
kind of
they're all
like.
standard stuff that like they're probably smaller, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm interested in them. Just there's not much else to talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, like I think here they announced a little bit more Shenmue 3. Now, I'm not somebody who's been waiting for Shenmue 3 for like a million years, so but they showed a little bit more about that. I think another game that did actually get my attention was a game called Valfaris. Now, this seems to be like this again. It's a Metroidvania kind of Contra style game that looks pretty crazy. So have check it out if you're kind of into that kind of game. They showed a little bit more about Borderlands 3. Terraria. I know a lot of people like Terraria, so they've released another expansion for Terraria after just when I thought they would stop. Telling Lies. Now, there's a game on Steam called Her Story. I don't know if you've ever played this before, Don, but essentially, you're essentially like a detective or like a police officer who's trying to figure out how to finish who's on a case about a murder. And in order to kind of do it, you look at all these videos that you've compiled, and you have to kind of type in like certain key phrases to learn more about a character. So, for example, if the character, she talks about a murder, so you type in murder, and so then it'll bring up any videos that kind of relate to that, and so you try and piece together this story and this puzzle about what has happened to this main character. Is she kind of to blame for it? Blah 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 blah. And Telling Lies seems to be like a spiritual successor to that. I think it has some famous actors who are doing their they're doing some voice acting for it as well. So I'm looking forward to it when it comes out. Again, it's just another small indie title. Now another game, Baldur's Gate 3. They didn't show too much about it. But it's a fan favorite, based in the Dungeons and Dragons world, so looking forward to that. And another small game called El Hio. I forget how to pronounce J's in kind of the Spanish language. I think it's El Hio.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, it's kind of like a stealth. It's like an indie game. It's got a really cool art style, and yeah, it kind of seems to be like a little bit of like a stealth puzzle game, which looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Puzzle
yeah.
game wise, I'm really just interested into Catherine, but
Catherine.
That's coming.
They
out
didn't
soon.
announce it. Yeah. That's going to be coming out relatively soon as well. Yeah, I guess you kind of move on to the Ubisoft conference. I think there's only kind of like there's some games that come out like like the Division Year 2, and yeah, like
They're
I guess
basically just helping. They're basically just adding extra content for games that are already
for
been
existing
existing,
games,
which I say is fine. Like it's better than like rehashing and doing the same different game every single time. And I feel like that's kind of the way the industry is going.
I was surprised that they're still supporting For Honor. I thought that game kind of died.
Yeah, especially like with now Mordau or whatever coming like is
Yeah,
already out and things like that. It's like man, it's a tough competition now.
Well, I mean, even when they announced Chivalry, Chivalry 2, it's like Chivalry 2 should have came out like ages ago. They're taking way too long with that. But we'll see where things go. But I think the two games that have me kind of interested from the Ubisoft conference, the first one is Watch Dogs 3. Now, there was a little bit of leaks about what Watch Dogs 3 would be about, and one of the things that ended up being true is the fact that you can basically recruit random NPCs to be a part of your...
They say anyone, but clearly
anyone.
It can't be anyone.
I think it actually probably can be anyone. I think that's what they're actually kind of going for. In the trailer, we kind of see, one of the characters, he's, looking for like somebody who has a background in, I think, AI tech of some kind to help them with one of the missions in the main game. And they find one, and he managed to save that person from being arrested by a cop. And yeah, he ends up dying, and it kind of shows this kind of like a roguelite kind of game style. Like you can recruit random people. They're probably going to have like, I don't know, the same kind of actors and actresses doing the voice acting for it. But they might have different personality traits. They might have different like abilities and stuff. It's all going to be mishmash. But we'll see how in depth it gets, because with systems like that, it usually comes down to, okay, people will just if you're playing the game, like the quote unquote in-game meta will be trying to find like a brawler who has there was one character who had like 100% damage, but then like melee damage, but then also gets minus 100% melee damage received. So you want to find somebody who's like 100% brawling damage but no negative, right? So you just kind of scan until you find somebody who's like that and recruit that person. I just want to see whether or not this game kind of incentivizes having different kind of people and choosing them based on like what you need. Like for example, they had that one of the funny things they showed is like there was this grandma that was there, right? Like there was this old geriatric woman that
Already a
they
fan favorite.
yeah, already a fan favorite. You know, one of the I remember in the the grandma's not going to be the main character, and it's like I'm gonna make the grandma the main character, which I kind of found really funny. But if it does, but again, the thing that's kind of interesting is because it has this kind of roguelike component where it's like if a character dies, they're dead. It's gonna make it has this kind of it's very similar to like wow, what's that game that you mentioned earlier with the aliens? Um, it's like a tactical RPG.
XCOM.
XCOM. It's kind of like XCOM. You kind of
Yeah, you gotta pick the
build
right
up all
person
these
for the mission.
characters. Yeah, and but then you start like when one of those characters die, it's kind of like a big deal. It's like oh my god, like I can't believe it. And it's kind of the same thing with this. What I would find interesting is like somebody mentioned that I remember reading in the comics comments where oh maybe like if you're a grandma, right? It can allow you to kind of get away with going into like high level or high security areas, and you can just be like, oh, sorry, I just like walked in here accidentally, and so like all the enemies might be less aggro on you because you're a grandma, but the kind of downside is you're physically not as capable to fight. Like as you can kind of see, they're like very slow, and they shooting people takes a while and stuff. Whereas if you play like a younger character, maybe you're more better at fighting and stuff, but you immediately get like checked out by security because you're like a younger character or something like that. I'd love to see if they kind of go that deep with like the in-game mechanics. Because I think people kind of saw the original Watch Dogs as being like, ooh, this kind of revolutionary thing that's going to blow away graphics, and it didn't end up being that game. But it has kind of led to like a bit of a resurgence with Watch Dogs 2. I think a lot of people kind of liked Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah,
And they're
Rockstar
doing
2 had a
something.
good personality to it.
Yeah, and Watch Dogs 3 seems to kind of continue that in a new setting and with the new game mechanics. So I look forward to seeing Watch Dogs 3 and where it will go going forward. And then the other game was only just like a trailer. There's not too much that you see about it. It's called Gods and Monsters. It kind of seemed like a little bit of like a Breath of the Wild, Assassin's Creed Odyssey kind of game, right?
Yeah,
Like if I
it could
was
it could even be something like a Shadow of the Colossus type of thing, where you're taking down these
exactly
big
mythic
monsters.
creatures, yeah, or something like that. So again, there's not really much. It's just like a CGI trailer for it, but I mean, it could be cool. Who knows?
Yeah, and then they just
Um,
showed Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is just Ghost Recon, a game, and yeah, but I think solid, okay roundup for Ubisoft. I'm just waiting for
Ubisoft,
whatever they
yeah.
announce for next gen, obviously. But yeah, moving on. We've got the Square Enix, or NX, whatever you want to call it, press conference, and they pretty much just start off right at the bat. They're just being like, yeah, we know we have it, we have everything. So they show us gameplay, extended gameplay. I think it's like 20 minutes of
Mhm,
Final Fantasy VII Remake.
mhm.
CGI trailer as well as the gameplay. And it looks really good. They explain the mechanics that
The battle system.
the battle
Oof,
system, which is
finally.
basically just being like, yeah, you can. It's kind of an action game where you can kind of spam attacks, but then
Yeah, it's
over time the bar builds up to actually do bigger chunk damage special attack moves. So it kind of reminds
yeah.
me of if you ever played Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It kind of had kind of the semi similar same.
Is is
Yeah,
that the game for like a PSP
yeah,
or something
PSP.
like
Yeah,
that?
it's
Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
that.
Good. Good. Yeah. Good. At least I'm kind of remembering like some of the games. Yeah. It's interesting. It's kind of doing like a little bit of like that hybrid system. Like it's kind of keeping the active battle system, but then it's also kind of introducing some of the newer mechanics from some of the other games. So it doesn't just feel like you're standing still. Not that I would have minded. If that was the case, but I'm just glad that there is a remake for this game. Now the problem with it is, I think the game is coming out. I want to say March next year, right?
Yes, and
And
then guess what comes out the next few weeks after that?
what?
Cyberpunk.
Oh, the Cyberpunk, oh boy, is that going to be tough to play both of those games back to back. But the thing with Final Fantasy VII is that they have said that they don't really know what the release schedule will be for the future game for Final Fantasy, like because this is going to be in different parts. The first game they even said is fills 2 Blu-ray discs worth of content. So you can only imagine, and that's just everything set in Midgard, right? It's not going to be based on anything outside of it. So we don't really know what's going to happen. And they don't really know. They were kind of honest. It's kind of nice for them to be honest about them not knowing what the roadmap for Final Fantasy VII Remake will be in the future. But that does make me a little bit hesitant for the game. Like, is like, are we going to get like a part 1 and never the part 2, and it's going to be something else that we're constantly waiting for? I just hope that they do get better at it.
Yeah, well, I think so, because like I'm even surprised that this game's coming out early next year. To be honest with you, like
yeah, agree.
I think they must have, after 15, everyone just shifted to this game, and then like other team was focusing on Kingdom Hearts 3, and they were just like, shit, we're gonna get a move on. So I'm surprised that they've even got something like going on. And I think like the halfway point is obviously going to be set in someone's death. And my whole thing is like, why is everyone excited for this game, man? Like, you're gonna see her die in HD, like, instead of even pixelated. So I'm like, man, that's gonna be even more brutal.
Yeah, it looks cool, and I'm excited for the game. I just hope that it's not gonna keep blue ballsing everybody in regards to it. I'm actually pretty
parts or something.
Yeah, you know what? I'm honestly pretty happy that they are kind of doing an extended look into Midgard, so it's not going to be like, because I think that's what everybody kind of like remembers from the first game, right? Like the cyberpunk, this cool futuristic cyberpunk city.
It's all cyberpunk.
It's all cyberpunk, right? But then you kind of leave the area, and it kind of goes back to being like a little bit of like a traditional like Japanese RPG game, until kind of towards the end of the game. No spoilers here, but yeah. It actually makes me want to play Final Fantasy again, so I might actually. But I have a lot of games that I need to.
Just go back to the classics.
Yeah, exactly. Now, in terms of other games that are interesting from here, there was the release an announcement of Final Fantasy VIII Remaster. Now, I was under the impression that they haven't been able to remaster this game because the original source code for the game was like missing or lost, and that was the reason why they couldn't remake it. But clearly they must have found one in someone's garage or something, because now we're getting the remaster. Yeah, they're like, give me the source code.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like, because like 7 and 9 and even like 10 has gotten like 3 remasters already, and then like every other Final Fantasy game has pretty much been remastered. Even like 12, 1 to 6 basically has, and then you just have 8 where it's just like, but why 8? It's so weird.
But why 8? But that's the reason, from what I understand, is because like they never had the source code to remaster, and clearly now they've got their hands on it. And I mean, the game looks like the original Final Fantasy VIII. Like I watched both games being played by my cousin, so a lot of these games, like for me from my childhood, was like just watching him play these games, from giant buster swords to gun blades, right?
It looks good. It looks good.
It looks really.
I'm just excited to play it. But yeah, aside from Square Enix wise, they finally had Crystal Dynamics reveal their Avengers game.
Exactly.
It's good. Like they didn't really show that. They didn't really show any gameplay, but there were certain segments where I'm like, that looks like gameplay. They just took out all the, like, graphics of like the health bar.
Like the health bar or whatever.
I don't know. It looks okay. I just want to know what the combat's about. At least we know that we're at least like switching between 4 or 5 Avengers. My whole thing is, it kind of looks weird. Like graphic.
That's the thing that I had watching this trailer, is like everybody just looked bootleg. You had like bootleg Tony Stark and bootleg Captain America. I feel like those, and then even Scarlet Witch looked weird. I think the only person that kind of looked normal was the Hulk, ironically enough, right? It looked very clear that like they couldn't get the likenesses of the actors from the Marvel movies for this game, and so they had to kind of make like their own kind of variation.
Mm.
Um,
And
yeah,
then they have a good cast. They got Nolan North and Troy Baker, which pretty much voice every other male video game guy.
yeah,
So they've got
iconic,
that.
iconic.
But they what I actually found very funny, like when they announced stuff, they just said PlayStation
Mm.
users get exclusive content. So I'm like, it's
Ugh,
Spider Man, isn't it? Like they would have to do the Spider
of
Man thing, and
course.
everyone's like, imagine like the MCU but in video games where there's games that link towards other games.
Ugh, that's so lame. Like, I hate that. That's so lame. Like, I get it. I get why they do it. Haha, it's Sony owns Spider-Man, therefore we're gonna have Spider-Man. It's just so dumb. You know, Marvel kind of fucked themselves up for that. So we'll see. Again, the game looks interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of see how they manage to do the gameplay between, having it switch between like Iron Man to Captain America to Black Widow to Hulk, and see, is it going to be active? Are they going to be in the same area, or is it going to be like, okay, this mission you are the Hulk, or this mission you can switch between the Hulk and Black Widow depending on what you want to do, whatever the mission designs, around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. It looks okay. Now that's kind of it for me for Square Enix. We'll move
Yeah,
to
like
the
they've got
final.
like Lost Remnant remake remastered, which is a weird game because I think that generally average like a 7 out of 10, like 6.5. It's an okay RPG, but it's kind of weird. Romancing Saga, that's a particular RPG series that's very linked to Final Fantasy, but like I don't know, I don't think it's really popular outside of Japan really. But pretty much moving on to Nintendo, which pretty much has a lot of JRPGs as well, but straight off the bat, they announce some DLC for Smash Bros.
Yeah, yeah. You know what was really funny? I think a lot of people were basically, wanting, you know, their own fan favorite person to be the new DLC for Super Smash Brothers, right? And the first one that they reveal is the Dragon Quest hero. Now, the funny thing is, I've been playing Dragon Quest 11, so I immediately knew who this character was. But I could imagine like a series of people scratching their heads, being like, literally what? Like,
Yeah,
who is this guy? Who are these other characters? They're all
they're
main
all
characters
named.
from the Dragon Quest series.
Now you know what it must feel with like people who like Fire Emblem and then like Super Smash has like 6 Fire Emblem characters and it's like
Yeah,
what?
exactly. Yeah, like because I've played some Fire Emblem, but I don't know the deep lore behind it. But I know a lot of I know some friends who kind of really love Fire Emblem games, and they're like, oh, why isn't this character in it? I mean, there's enough Fire Emblem characters in
Too many.
Smash, for
There's so
God's
many
sake.
ones with swords. So many.
But the thing that's really funny is like towards the end of the conference, they kind of have another trailer where it's kind of like a variation of the King K. Rool announcement where it's Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, they like wake up and they look outside and it's like the shadow of King K. Rool there, and it's like, holy shit, there's the announcement of like an iconic Donkey Kong boss as a new character. And they do the same thing, but they have all three characters looking out. And it's like, oh, it's Banjo Kazooie. And then they kind of bait and switch, and they're like, oh, it's actually
The Duck
what is
Hunt
it?
dog. They
The Duck
basically
Hunt
troll
dog and
you. I'm
Duck.
like, well done, Nintendo.
I'm like, fantastic. But then they're like, oh, okay, then who is it going to be? And then it does end up coming Banjo Kazooie, which I thought was an excellent. They did an excellent job of the character reveal, and I think a lot of people are very happy that Banjo did get in on the game. Now, from my understanding, Banjo Kazooie is owned by Microsoft, right?
Yeah, because Rare owns them.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like Banjo. Those games are very synonymous with Nintendo. Like those games very much feel like a Nintendo game. Banjo
Yeah,
to me,
but
Banjo Kazooie, and I feel like
uh,
obviously Nintendo and like Microsoft. I think they've been in talks for quite some time. I think like for example like Cuphead, for example,
mhm,
is on the Nintendo Switch now. So I feel
yeah.
like they probably were just like yeah, and also put Banjo
Cu-
in Smash.
I mean, Cuphead's going to be on the Tesla,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
gonna
it's
be
going to
annoying.
be, but yeah, like I think the thing is, it's kind of finally showing that Microsoft and Sony can kind of play ball together, right? We're finally getting a game that has Nintendo characters in it. It has Sony PlayStation characters in it, with Snake and a few other guys. And we're also getting characters that are technically owned by Xbox. So who knows? It might be in maybe the next Smash game, or if it's going to be a continual support of Super Smash Ultimate, we might get like Master Chief. I think another character I think a lot of people were expecting or wishing to be a character was Minecraft Steve. Was another character that was a potential for a DLC character, but I think there's a lot of potential characters that can be in Super Smash Bros. So we'll see where things go forward. Now, the follow-up to it was, I think it was pretty smart that they introduced the Dragon Quest Hero DLC for Smash, because then they also announced that Dragon Quest 11 Switch S is coming out for the Switch, which is like an enhanced version that has some of the content from the Nintendo DS, 3DS is going to be on this, and so it's going to be really cool. If you haven't played the game, get on it. It's really, really fun.
Yeah,
They
think
announced.
I've been meaning to play some of the Dragon Quest games. Just that there's so many, and I do own the games. I just never played any of them.
Yeah, I'd recommend Dragon Quest 11 because it's got a pretty basic story, but it's really cool, and you can see Akira Toriyama is like kind of designed like everywhere for this game, from all the creatures to all the characters that you interact with. The big thing is like the one thing I would say is like the story's pretty it's pretty 1 2 3. It's pretty basic, but it's pretty good at the same time. It kind of brings back the kind of classic JRPG feel, which I kind of feel is sometimes missing from like the mainstream. Like they always try and like there's like a subversion of it or something like that. It's just kind of really good and it's solid, and I think it's kind of considered one of the best in the series. So definitely for all our listeners, go play Dragon Quest 11. You don't really need to know anything about the previous games to jump on board. Another game that got announced was Luigi's Mansion 3, which I think a lot of people have been waiting for. More so because of Luigi Mansion 1, because I think a lot of the people who maybe enjoyed that game, like maybe they didn't play Luigi's Mansion 2 on the 3DS. So for a lot of people, it's almost like Luigi's Mansion 3 is like the true sequel to that game. And it looks really cool. It looks really interesting with all the kind of mechanics and making Gooigi and fighting ghosts and stuff like that. I think it's more of more things that people like. And it looks really cool. And
I think Nintendo pretty much did that this conference where they pretty much showed things that people like. They did a sequel of reimagining of Trials of Mana. Fire Emblem, 3 Heroes, even like Witcher 3 to Switch. So I think they got a lot of games that people kind of wanted or thought they wanted. Even Animal Crossing. Like I don't care about Animal Crossing, but they've got a new one.
Well, here's the thing. I kind of felt like Nintendo did an excellent job, and it is probably like I think the Microsoft conference was like good with like some of the games that they announced, but I think Nintendo kind of blew it out of the water with everything. It was just like, all right, here's like someone, and they're gonna snap their fingers, and it's gonna be a trailer. Then another trailer, and okay, we're back. We're gonna introduce the new president. American president, the Nintendo president of America, Doug Bowser, but they did it in a cool way where it's like, Bowser from Mario comes, and it's like, no, get out of here, dude. I kind of really liked the bit, even though it was kind of like cringy at the same time. I liked it. I liked that they kind of just went for being fun and being very quick with everything that they tried to do.
I know they've been doing that for the past few years. Like I remember they had one with puppets. I think even one where they got the people who did Robot Chicken to do their press conference, the E3 press conference, and I thought that was pretty funny.
That's cool.
Like Reggie being like a Robot Chicken character, so I thought that was really cool.
Well, yeah, you see, Nintendo. You see, that's how I kind of feel that like Nintendo just gave the gamers what they want. You want these, you want this nerdy Japanese shit. It's right here. You want Luigi's Mansion? Boom, you got it. All right. Everything I think people have got in this conference gives it. And now another one. One of the games that was a follow up is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. It's not like I think it's technically a remake, right, of the original game, Link's Awakening,
the remake
right?
Is a Game Boy, like not even color game. It's just a Game Boy game. So
Game Boy game, but yeah, the thing, or the SNES game, right? The thing I just want to, I don't want to call it like a remake necessarily, just because like, Zelda's kind of weird that way, where it's like something will be like a remake, but it's like, oh, it's set in like this different timeline that's different from the other one. Like, I'm not too sure if that's the case for this one, like whether it is like a direct kind of update of the original game, but it looks amazing, and I love the art style for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's very different, but pretty much I feel like for me the biggest announcement that Nintendo had aside from the Pokemon stuff, but the one that means most to me is finally a No More Heroes 3. Because there was
oh,
Hyper
yep.
Strikes Again, which was like a random kind of semi spin-off game for
Hmm.
Switch. And people like kind of half hate, half like. But they finally announced No More Heroes 3, and I like Suda51's game. So he did Lollipop Chainsaw, Shadows the Damned, Killer 7. He's a very weird designing guy, and I really like his stuff. So I'm really hyped for No More Heroes 3. Um,
Yeah, I knew you would have. I knew you liked it too when I saw it on this guy. I'm like, ah, yep, Don's gonna be. It's really cool that they're kind of going about like making these kind of first party games, and they're coming out on the Switch as well. Like that, it makes me more happy that I bought one, because there's a lot of really cool games that are coming out, whether they be in the next couple of months or next year. Like, it's something to look forward to. As you mentioned earlier, Fire Emblem finally got announced and like officially releasing with a lot of details. Fire Emblem Three Houses. It looks more of the same from the Fire Emblem series, so yeah, I might be picking it up to just have a play of it.
mhm.
Um,
But yeah, and
and
I guess I guess closing out is they had just an announcement trailer that just said, "Hey, we're making a sequel to Breath of the
well,
Wild." So
well,
instead of just saying it's a new Zelda, it's Breath of the Wild.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think they're calling it a Breath of the Wild sequel, but it's not actually it's not going to be called Breath of the Wild. But before we get to that, I just want to just quickly mention there's a few games that they also kind of announced. A game called Astral Chain. It looked really cool.
Reminded me of
Pokemon Sword and
Pandora's Tower, which is on the Wii, which is about a tower as well. So
Oh,
who
okay.
knows?
There was also again there was more announcements about Pokemon Sword and Shield that's going to be coming out semi soonish. There's also Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which again it seems to be like them kind of finally releasing that game, which I think a lot of people have been waiting for. But then they're essentially just doing like the Infinity War story for it. So
Mm.
yeah, it seems to be a game that I'll probably play as well. But yeah, with the Breath of the Wild sequel announcement, looks pretty cool. At least from the trailer that we saw, it actually, again, a lot of these trailers and a lot of these games are just reminding me, man, I need to finish these games that I've started. Because I haven't finished Breath of the Wild. It's a really fun game though. And yeah, more of the same. From what I understand from some of the news that's been released recently, is that it's going to be using the same map, but they're obviously going to be changing up some of the mountains or lands and locations and where people are.
Well,
So
that gives
it's
me hope that this game will come out somewhat soon-ish because they don't have to redesign a whole different
soon-ish.
world.
Well, we'll see. I think the thing is like like Breath of the Wild was a flagship title that for when the Switch came out in 2016, right? And so with that being said, like yeah, it's been like in maybe a little bit of development like since that game got released, but I guess we'll see whether we'll get like it'll be crazy if it comes out 2020, right? Like I don't imagine maybe
2021
2021.
at least.
Yeah. Well, or it might release on alongside the Switch 2 that's coming out, like the Switch upgrade that they're doing, like the super duper edition. So it might be something to get people because again, a lot of the I think a big thing that happened with Nintendo, I think a lot of their stocks dropped this year because they had a estimate for 20 million consoles to be sold, and they had to reassess it and put it down to 17 million. And that obviously looks bad in the stock, so they kind of suffered a little bit from it. So I think very much like how what you said earlier about how some of the major players at E3 are kind of holding off for next year's E3. I can imagine that Nintendo might be doing a similar thing where that's the one thing I liked about it. Like they just teased Breath of the Wild. Like they're just letting you know, hey, it's happening. That's all you
Mm.
need to know.
That's all we need to
Same thing
know.
with what they Same thing with the Elder Scrolls, right? They let us know,
Yeah,
hey,
it's probably obvious. Like, of course, Nintendo is gonna make another Zelda, and of course, Nintendo or
well,
they're gonna make it. But at least knowing that it is happening.
but the thing is, it's very rare for like a Zelda title, like two Zelda titles to be released um in the same console cycle, right? Like I think the last one was
It was the Wii, wasn't it? It was the Wii because it was Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess. Start of the
right.
generation, right at the end of the generation.
And then prior to that it was Majora's Mask and uh see, I always played Majora's Mask, so I always forget what the first
Ocarina
one.
of Time.
Ocarina of Time, yeah. Yeah, so and it was those games. So it isn't, it's kind of uncommon to have it all released, like, and yeah, so it's kind of cool that they are announcing and getting people excited for it. So it could be something that they'll be like, hey, we're gonna release the Switch 2 Christmas, and it's also releasing alongside of Breath of the Wild 2, and you're gonna be able to play Zelda in it as well. A lot of the people who've been playing Breath of the Wild on modded switches, I think, are able to play as female Linkle, as it's called, the mod calls it. So, it is kind of allowing people to kind of, maybe there might be a mechanic where you can play as like both of the characters, or you can just choose at the beginning of the game if you want to play as Zelda or Link. So yeah, it's cool to see them kind of doing more with the games. And yeah, I kind of find that the Nintendo Direct was like the really, really cool, probably the best conference, and then probably followed by the Microsoft conference.
Microsoft, yeah. Well, yeah. That being said, since we got through all the conferences, let's just pick our top five, games that we're excited for, or the show, or whatever we think of.
Hmm.
I'll start with my number five is Gears of War 5. I saw
Okay,
gameplay with
no,
that.
very,
Yeah,
very, very, very,
it's all it's all about the
yeah,
vibes.
yeah, I
Um,
like it, I like
yeah,
it.
but yeah, I like the Gears of War series. It's a big franchise, especially when it
Hmm.
comes to the market. Like for Microsoft, it's basically Halo and Gears, number one
Hmm.
and number two. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where the story goes. Gameplay looks like solid. Gameplay much more fluent than it was before. Like it's always fluent, but it's even more now. Where
Hmm.
I miss kind of slamming into cover, shooting people with a shotgun. It's good feeling, good times, and I can't wait for Gears 5 basically, which comes out September this year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, one of the games that I'm excited for is for my number five is Watchdogs 3. Again, the game kind of seems like if they can kind of nail kind of you can recruit anyone and they'll have interesting powers, and you can kind of put it into this hacking world. It gets me interested in playing a game that's a little bit different from your more kind of core GTA paint by numbers gameplay. I'm looking forward to Watch Dogs 3. And it does make me want to pick up Watch Dogs 2 just to see if I can see if there's any connection between any of those games.
Yeah, it looks like there might, but who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, my number four is No More Heroes 3. As you mentioned before, it's pretty much
Hmm.
my type of game. I like the character Travis Touchdown. I like Suda51's style of how he designed stuff. Because he's always crazy, kooky worlds. This time around, it looks like there's no assassins left because I think Travis he's an old assassin, and he was killing all these assassin characters who are kind of very colorful characters. So think of something like Shadow of the Colossus, but like instead of big monsters, they're just weird boss guys. But it
Hmm.
looks like he's gonna save the world or something like that. So I just can't wait for lightsabers and doing fun stuff in the crazy No More Heroes world.
Now this might be on your list, but I've put Halo Infinite as my number four. So if it's on your list, I'll hold off talking about it. But the thing with Halo Infinite, it looks really cool, and the fact that it's coming on PC makes me pretty excited as well. So more Halo is always a good thing.
Well, Halo is a good Halo. Yep. I think my number three is Cyberpunk. You'd say,
Okay.
hey, that's a little bit low, but I think we've seen it for 2 years now. I've been
Hmm.
hyped for all this time. I've seen gameplay, so I think at the current moment, I'm pretty much ready to buy the game. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just do like I like the settings of stuff. I can't wait to see more of the world, how the story kind of expands, and I guess where we can go from here. So because I think Cyberpunk could be something very special.
Yeah. My number three is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, the remake looks awesome. I'll be interested to see how they pull off a lot of the classic Final Fantasy gameplay with iconic characters. There was a big controversy, I think, initially where people were saying, "Oh, are they gonna make Tifa look like how she did in the original games?" But I think they did like a good combination of like making her look quote unquote tasteful. But I think the big thing was like, "Oh, are they gonna give her big tits?" Right?
They're
And
modest size, I think.
yeah, the thing is, okay, look, they took away her cup size, but then they gave her thigh highs. Just be happy, all right? There's a lot of really cool stuff with the new redesign. I'm really interested to see how they pull off the Final Fantasy remake and the fact that it's coming out next year. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much my number two, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I feel like I put it up over above Cyberpunk just because I'm just surprised that even this game even exists. People like talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake since that tech demo back in 2005 with the PlayStation 3 demo.
PlayStation 3 demo,
and
yeah.
everyone's just kind of like, yeah, this is a thing in the pipeline. They've remade every single Final Fantasy, and then this one deserves the big HD rebuilding from the front on. And I really like what they're doing, especially when it comes to building up the world even more. Especially with this generation, you can build up stories and side characters get more of their fill. So very hype for Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah, my number two is Borderlands 3. I've been waiting for a sequel for this game for a while, and the fact that it's going to be coming out in the next few months is pretty awesome. They also released a new DLC as well for Borderlands 2, which is making me just want to play Borderlands 2 again, which I have been. You see, I've been all over the place. I've been stretched out so thin with all these games, but the fact that they are making, I might hold off in purchasing it just because it's not coming. It's currently going to be an exclusive for 6 months on the Epic's Game Store, and I'm going to be waiting for it to come out on the Steam Store. But I'm still super excited about what Gearbox are going to be doing with Borderlands 3 because it looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, it does. But my number one is Halo Infinite. This is going to be a wrap up of all the Halo things, especially Master Chief's journey, or John's journey, especially with Cortana. I feel like this is going to be the most emotional heavy, probably out of all the Halos. Probably going to hopefully return back to form when it comes to the story as well as the multiplayer. And yeah, when I watched that trailer, like there was no gameplay. However, I didn't know how attached I was to Halo until I heard the music and I saw the visual of like Master Chief. For some reason, it resonated with me so much that the icon of Master Chief resonates to kind of like my childhood almost. Playing a lot of Halo with my friends, and as well as the music, it kind of hits me into gear. Like, I don't know, emotionally, it hit me. I don't know what it was, but Halo, I didn't know I was so attached to it. So definitely, I can't wait to play that. Basically on launch, whenever I buy the Project Scarlet, I'll buy that at launch. Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, my number. Speaking of games that I'll probably be buying immediately on launch, my number, Cyberpunk 2077. This game has been talked about for a while now, and it's finally fantastic to actually see gameplay, to see a lot more of the story, to see the fact that we have people like Keanu and Lady Gaga in it. Seems like this game is kind of heralded to be like the next big thing. I've been talking about it for a while on the podcast, and the thing about this game is that it seems to be filling a niche that I think a lot of people have been wanting in a lot of games that's been missing, which is games, and I think the last game to kind of do it really well is a game in a similar genre, which is a Deus Ex Human Revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a kind of taking that niche and then taking it to another level, given the projected ways that you can play the game, the different story decisions, the different characters you can interact with, the fact that it has a deep lore which is rooted within Cyberpunk 2020, the tabletop game, has it, and the fact that it's being created by CD Projekt Red, the creators of the Witcher series. I will probably buy this game like on release, but I'm also kind of itching to do a pre-order as well, which is very rare for me. I don't usually do pre-orders, but I kind of like they I think one of the pre-orders have like a map of Night City, which is the city in which Cyberpunk 2020 is based on. So I might pre-order it purely so I can get that map. If there's a digital version, maybe if I can get a digital map, that'd be cool too.
Mm-hmm.
Just so I can maybe do it for a potential Cyberpunk tabletop game that I might play with some of my friends as well that I might make. So I'm very hyped for Cyberpunk 2077. It's probably going to be one of the top games of next year.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's our E3 big blowout this year. Pretty much hyped for a lot of games, and we'll probably be talking about them in the future. Remember, you can always listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, and usually we live stream this on our Marketing Movies channel on YouTube. So until next time, maybe Henry Cavill is going to appear in Cyberpunk. We don't know. But until next time, see you guys.
Catch ya.